Today's speaker has spent his entire career figuring out the future and helping others better understand what's coming next. He's done this in an unusually wide range of roles in different fields over the years that make him exceptionally good at telling the big picture story of our times and where America and the world are heading in the decades ahead. Leyden came to Silicon Valley at the beginning of the digital revolution to work with the founders of Wired magazine and has built an extraordinary network of technologists and entrepreneurs over time. He gets tech and innovation. Leyden ran Wired as managing editor in the heyday of the 1990s and subsequently founded and ran 2 of his own media startups, focusing on new technologies and the future. He gets what it takes to run an organization. He worked closely with the pioneers of the futures business, most recently at the Long Now Foundation, and has mastered how to track megatrends and the art of strategic foresight. He now advises senior leaders of top companies on the strategic choices that lie just ahead. Leyden is the co-author of 2 influential books on the future that were published in multiple languages, The Long Boom and What's Next. He knows how to tell a great story. He co-founded a political startup that helped transition politics to the internet and served on Barack Obama's first Technology and Media Advisory Committee. Leyden gets politics and government. Leyden started his career as a journalist in different regions of America, worked as a foreign correspondent in Asia for Newsweek magazine, and has traveled to more than 50 countries. He has a global perspective too. Please welcome Peter Leyden.
Well, thank you for that intro and that welcome. And also hearing all the illustrious folks that have come and spoken with you folks before, it's a tough act to follow, but I'm hoping to do it. I just flew in from San Francisco yesterday, ground zero of a lot of this AI stuff, and it's fantastic that I get to talk to a group that gets tech, not just gets tech, but is really in the center of the next story. And what I'm going to do to kind of in return, essentially, for this invitation to come down here is to try to talk to you about what's going to happen in the next 25 years with tech. 3 world historical technologies I'm going to lay out here are going to drive what I would make the case for is going to be a great era of progress. It's far from the gloom and doom that you're hearing in the media now. But I think we're really actually, there's many, many reasons to be optimistic, and I'm going to kind of run through a bunch of ideas and slides that are going to help stretch your thinking and kind of get you thinking to start off this conference. Now, I mentioned that I just came from San Francisco. I mean, I think folks are going to see the arrival of generative AI, which frankly has only been out for 2 years now, as a world historical moment. I really think it is really going to mark the arrival of a truly transformative technology. It has, in some ways, what generative is doing is we've had AI before, but it's been very focused. It's been very targeted. You had to have all the kind of resources with data scientists and coders to kind of focus on one thing like search or something that you could do through Google. But what this did is it opened AI up to everyone. It was really the ability to kind of just through talking, anybody, anywhere, to actually harness this incredible power of technology. It's really that we're actually crossing the threshold into an AI age. The AI age is beginning. I use the word age deliberately. When we use the word age and kind of talking about humans, we kind of entered the Bronze Age. We learned how to work with metals. When you get into a different age, it's essentially a step change in our abilities, and it essentially opens up a technology that humans will use forever after. I've been actually for the last 2 years gathering some of the top experts in AI to really parse out what's happening here. So what I'm talking to you about today, it's not just going to be about an AI, by the way, but when I am talking to you is a synthesis of what I'm learning from everybody else. So for example, here's anyone who has an Apple and is talking to Siri. This is Adam Cherry, who's the co-founder of Siri, which Steve Jobs had the vision to buy early on. But Adam said, and this is one of my gatherings there, he said, I've been working for almost 40 years in AI and more than 30 years in conversational AI. And I am one of those who say I never thought I would see what's happened in this last year in my lifetime. Very, very different kind of future that we're heading into here. And one of the reasons I kind of do this, the driver of this kind of story, is that we're walking through 3 world historical technologies, meaning technologies that people for the rest of human history will look back on as kind of key, fundamentally game-changing technologies. One is AI. I made the case for that quickly. The other one is the arrival of clean energy with renewables and all that, but also there's a kind of nuclear version of that we can get into. But essentially, we are crossing the threshold into essentially an era of clean technology. Now, the reason I'm saying this is a game changer is technology, or energy is now going from a commodity, something coal, oil, whatever, you dig it out of the ground, to a technology, which is like solar, batteries, and kind of so that once you move an energy into a technology, you can constantly improve it, you can manufacture it at scale, you can bring the cost down in ways that a commodity just fluctuates up and down. It's a huge game changer. Humans have never had that kind of energy source, and now we have that. And then the third one is bioengineering, our mastery of genetic engineering, which is now starting to happen, our understanding of biology. We are going to basically engineer life. This is a world essentially that everyone gets. We understand that. Politicians have answers. Journalists know how to talk about that. That world is breaking down. That is increasingly coming under stress, not working. All this kind of, a lot of the trauma that we're feeling right now is that stuff is starting to really be kind of seen as a past. What's fascinating about this juncture, though, is every one of these has a kind of a nascent system that's starting to emerge here, just not as clearly as the old system that's just crystal clear, was crystal clear. For example, now our new meta challenge is climate change. Energy is shifting rapidly to clean. We're going to talk about this. Transportation is rapidly going to electric. We're watching a culture much more dominated by the millennials, the children of the boomers, and by now the biggest generation of history here. Politics, I would just say, without getting into partisan kind of stuff, I would think some of the characteristics of politics are going to probably get a little more progressive, partly driven by these younger generations. Economics will probably have a bigger role for the public sector, I would argue, just preparing you to think about this. We'll get into it a little bit later. Capitalism is now, we're all trying to figure out what all the stakeholders are kind of in that. That's a lot of the work now is virtual since the pandemic. We're trying to figure out how that works. Production is going to be more biological, although that's taking a little more time. That's not immediately obvious. Geopolitics is now geared to China, Asia, and kind of partly because those are the big populations that have to be dealt with to solve climate change on the planet. And so what I would argue is these are all the nascent systems that are kind of emerging. They're nascent, they're not fully understood. And so what we're kind of living through here in the 20s particularly is essentially the tension between this thing happening right now. At the end of 2020, this is January 2020, the most valuable companies in the world, the commanding heights of the global economy, were all tech companies, all West Coast tech companies, most of them in San Francisco, a couple in Seattle. But and they all were trillion-dollar companies. I mean, eventually Facebook did go up and down in that, but that snapshot is basically, it's a crazy thing in 25 years to happen this. People will always hang on to the old way of doing stuff in the old technology because I know it, I don't want to change, I've been, whatever, I'm making money in this, however it is. And then there'll be a new technology or something, and people are like, oh, that's interesting, but I'm not changing. There'll be enough people that adopt that new technology. Let's say like the Uber, wow, you can actually call a car to you and it comes here and boom, it's all good. It's like, and everyone says, oh my God, it's so much better. Boom, and the whole thing shifts. These paradigm shifts happen quick, really quick, and in fact, we're in the midst of a bunch of them right now. And so that's why I'm kind of reminding you techies about how this has happened before. Now, the defining feature of the next 25 years, there's been a debate for a while, but I don't think, to my mind, is a debate in the same way. There has been, particularly through the US, just had the IRA, which is really a kind of $350 billion from the federal government to basically stimulate the acceleration of climate-related technologies. Anyhow, that is, there was a kind of a default way we thought we were going, which is the red, but essentially we do think now we can actually hit 100% clean energy by 2035, sorry. That's doable now in ways that before we didn't know how we were going to pull this off. It's some fascinating things here. Oops, let me do one more here. There we go. It's not just the public sector doing this. This is private sector money. Look at this, the last numbers here. Basically, we've gotten over $1 trillion now. Is private money. This has nothing to do with the government telling you what to do. Boom, smart money's moving to this. Basically, that green there is basically the auto industry. Got $350 billion of investment last year. American history is basically, and I'm going to run you down here, but I want to just remind you, We go through these 40-year cycles and have since the very beginning. There was essentially a 40-year reinvention of America coming off the Revolutionary War. There was a reinvention around a kind of more populist kind of backlash to that, which was Andrew Jackson and others. It kind of went to the war. Then there was a kind of reinvention of America around the Civil War and the post-war world there. Then there was a reinvention around the early, what they called the progressive era, was Teddy Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson. Both parties, by the way, both parties playing these games. It's just the kind of zeitgeist of the era. Then there was a reinvention around the Great Depression, World War II, post-war world, coming off FDR. Then there was a reinvention around the Reagan Revolution, and kind of even Dems kind of went more into market-oriented kind of thinking around that kind of stuff. Something is going to happen now. I don't know what. It doesn't mean exactly 2020, but this next era, I think we're going to see another configuration around that. Stay open. These things always, these junctures always bring great tension, great polarization, passionate politics. I mean, in one of them we had a civil war, 600,000 Americans died. I mean, they can get bad. That's the worst, obviously. But I'm saying this is a common thing. Stakes are high. New technologies are opening up new things. Old things are collapsing. A lot of passion. So that's one lens to see this through, as America does get through these things. And ultimately, I would say the final push, this last little bit here, is this is happening all over the world. This thing is not just an American thing. And I know we got 17 countries here. But there has been an interesting kind of battle between democracies and autocracies, or totalitarian areas and things like that, that has gone since the beginning of America, basically. And all those junctures I just talked to you about, American junctures of transformation, have actually ended up with some kind of leap forward globally, like around 1900, the progressive era, boom, expansion of democracies. There was another one around after World War II, boom, it expanded a bit. And then after the kind of the 1980 there, fall of the Berlin Wall, boom, it expanded. So there has been this upward trajectory. But what I will say to end this little talk here is that China is now, in the game here. And if I had more time, I could talk a lot. I was a foreign correspondent in China. I was there in Tiananmen Square, all that kind of stuff. I know a lot about China. But I will say this about that in AI. There are two AI superpowers in the world right now, only two. And it's the US and it's China. And they have very different ways of thinking about AI. There has been this interesting race. This is, I want to go back fast to that, given the timing here. But I will show this. Okay, this is a chip. Go back one more. The fastest supercomputers here. Yeah. China wasn't even in the game until about 2015, but basically they started throwing themselves at supercomputers, which is essentially another proxy for AI and kind of the advanced computing. And that's the US there kind of giving up some space there. Chip manufacturing, you saw a lot of stuff about this. This, again, has started since the turn of the 20 years ago here. We're kind of neck and neck on that, and we're clawing back some of that because it's a kind of vulnerability. And I would say this matters because AI, this powerful new tool that basically is the foundational tool of the, for centuries since. There is one way to use it. If you use it for totalitarian kind of top-down kind of way of doing it, that could really be a kind of one kind of world. And then you could do it in a kind of what I would say is more the US and the Western version, which is a little crazier, but it's kind of bottom-up approach. It gets nutty, it gets crazy, people kind of, all the stuff that's happening in our politics now, but it's an open, a process I think is healthier. And so I would just but I'm an optimist here, I want to say. I don't think we're necessarily going to go into a necessary Cold War there, but I would put this out there. It's going to be a big, interesting next 25 years here. And so I think we're going to make the transition from that world, which is kind of running, kind of falling apart at some level, or kind of seen its better days, did a lot of great stuff. And I think we're going to basically watch this thing kind of take some kind of sense of kind of what's going to come, basically, whereas we figure this thing out on the fly. How does this all work? And I think people in 50, 100,000 years from now, they're going to look back and say, early that kind of 20th, first century, that's when they finally figured out AI. That's when they broke their threshold and kind of figured out AI. And then they're going to say, that's when they finally figured out how to do kind of clean energy so that they could just make super amounts of clean energy and didn't kind of blow up the planet. And they're going to say, that's when they started to bioengineer life, which is kind of how we still do things now, and it all works, and we're all in sync with nature. And I'll say to you folks here, folks, you are here. It is now. And in fact, let's make the most of this moment. This is how to get a hold of me.
On behalf of the board of directors and our audience, we'd like to present the Survivors Alliance a check for $5,000 in your name.
Oh, wow. Fantastic.